God, who is holy, claims us as His own to share His holiness.
What happens when one of the most loved figures in global Catholicism finally steps up to the mic to talk about an issue that's been kept under wraps for ages? Let's just say people pay attention. Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, often called the Asian Francis for his down-to-earth vibe, charm, and deep wisdom, just dropped a truth bomb that's shaking things up in the Vatican and beyond. Is this the beginning of a new chapter for Catholicism? Will Tagle's influence inspire other leaders to speak out and take action? Or will his words just fade away like another fleeting controversy? So, first subscribe to the channel. There's definitely some buzz about his potential. Whether you see him as a hero, a heretic, or somewhere in between, you can't ignore the impact he's having on the global Catholic community. His voice has sparked some serious conversations, and that could end up being his biggest legacy. So, what makes him such a game-changer in the Church? And why does the chatter about him possibly becoming the next pope seem to grow louder every day? Tagle's vision for the Catholic Church is refreshingly straightforward. It should be a home for everyone. Yep, that means the poor, the marginalized, the doubters, and even that one friend who only shows up for Christmas Mass. For Tagle, the Church isn't some exclusive club where only the holiest get in. It's more like a sanctuary where everyone, no matter their background or struggles, should feel welcome. His mantra? A church of the poor. And trust me, this isn't just some catchy slogan for a bumper sticker. Tagle truly believes the Church should stand with those that society often overlooks. He's not one to sit back and bark orders from some ivory tower. He's all about getting in the trenches, both literally and figuratively, when it comes to helping those in need. Unsurprisingly, Tagle's statements have sparked a whirlwind of reactions. Social media is buzzing with hashtags, and news outlets are racing to dissect every word he says. Some folks are calling him a visionary leader who tackles tough issues head-on, while others are less thrilled, accusing him of stirring the pot in ways that might do more harm than good. And then there are the everyday Catholics, the ones in the pews who've been waiting for someone like Tagle to voice what they've been thinking all along. For them, his words feel like a breath of fresh air, a sign that maybe, just maybe, change is on the horizon. Tagle often talks about mercy and understanding instead of strict dogma, a philosophy that vibes well with Pope Francis's approach. The Church must listen before it speaks, he said. And honestly, isn't that advice we all could use? Speaking of social media, Tagle isn't shy about embracing the digital world. While some church leaders are still figuring out how to send an email without accidentally using Latin, Tagle is out there engaging with younger folks on platforms like Facebook and Instagram. He's even made a splash at events like World Youth Day, showing he's not just about preaching to the choir, he's about growing it. Tagle's rise through the Vatican ranks has been nothing short of incredible. Born in the Philippines, his mix of humility, alignment with Pope Francis's progressive ideals, and undeniable charm has made him one of the most talked-about figures in church leadership. With his global influence, there's been a lot of chatter and speculation about what's next for him in the Vatican. Is he being prepped for the papacy? Could he be the one to carry on Pope Francis's vision, or even outshine big names like Cardinal Pietro Parolin? You know, predicting the future is tough, but Luis Antonio Tagle seems to be hitting all the right notes. He's got this compassionate vibe, is super forward-thinking, and really connects with both churchgoers and those who feel left out by the traditional church scene. But let's not rush things. Right now, Tagle is all about his current mission: making the Catholic Church a welcoming place where everyone feels valued and heard. Whether he ends up as the next pope or not, it's clear that he's already changing the game for what it means to lead in today's church. So, is he the Asian pope everyone's been talking about? Maybe. But more importantly, he's on a mission to show us that faith isn't about being exclusive or perfect. It's about love, understanding, and walking through life together, ups and downs included. And honestly, isn't that just what we need right now? Now, let's talk about Pope Francis. Since he stepped into the role in 2013, this guy has been shaking things up in the Vatican, where tradition usually calls the shots. He's the first Jesuit pope, the first from the Americas, and the first to choose the name Francis. He's anything but your typical pope. He's humble, loves stirring the pot, and has a vision that mixes compassion with what's relevant today. Pope Francis is all about dragging the Catholic Church into the 21st century, whether it wants to go or not. One of his boldest moves has been tackling clericalism, which is basically the stiff hierarchy that often puts clergy on a pedestal. In his eyes, bishops and priests aren't just big shots. They're meant to be servants of the people. He famously said that shepherds should smell like their sheep, which is a pretty poetic way to say that they should be down to earth and relatable. If there's one thing Pope Francis isn't afraid to do, it's speak out on social justice issues. He's called economic inequality the root of all social evil, and he's made it a huge part of his papacy during a time when a lot of leaders shy away from tough topics. Francis dives right in, sometimes with a smile, and sometimes with a bit of righteous anger. Not everyone is on board with his bold style, though. Some traditionalists within the Church have pushed back against his reforms, and critics outside the Vatican wonder if he's doing enough. One of his smartest moves has been decentralizing power in the Church. It might sound boring, but it's actually a game changer. By promoting open dialogue and teamwork within the Synod of Bishops, he's made sure that laypeople, clergy, and marginalized groups have a say in what happens. His recent initiative, the Synod on Synodality, is probably his most ambitious effort yet to listen to voices from all corners of the Church. This focus on inclusivity and dialogue isn't just changing how decisions are made. It sends a strong message that the Catholic Church isn't just about Rome anymore. It's about everyone, everywhere. While some might complain about this shift away from centralized authority, others see it as a long overdue step towards making the Church more relevant in today's globalized world. Let's be real. The Vatican hasn't exactly been a model of transparency when it comes to money. Scandals about questionable financial practices have hung over the Holy See like a dark cloud. But Pope Francis has come in swinging, implementing strict measures for accountability and oversight. He didn't just put a Band-Aid on it, he did a complete overhaul. One of his big moves was setting up the Secretariat for the Economy, kind of like a watchdog group to keep financial practices squeaky clean and free from scandals. Think of it as the Vatican's version of a high-stakes audit team, but with rosaries instead of calculators. While Pope Francis was tackling finances, he also kept his eye on another huge issue: our fragile planet. In 2015, he released Laudato Si', an encyclical that made waves not just in the Catholic Church but globally. Channeling his inner environmental activist, he urged Catholics everywhere to roll up their sleeves and take action against climate change. This wasn't just a gentle suggestion, it was a wake-up call. He made it clear that caring for our planet isn't just a nice idea, it's a moral obligation. For a long time, European influence dominated Vatican leadership, but Pope Francis decided it was time to shake things up. With the Church growing in places like Asia, Africa, and Latin America, he knew it was crucial to make sure these voices were heard loud and clear. Pope Francis has been shaking things up by bringing in cardinals and bishops from places that usually don't get much say in Vatican decisions. This isn't just about checking a box for diversity. It's a smart move to highlight where Catholicism is really thriving. It's like he looked at a global map of the Church and thought, let's give credit where it's due. A key appointment was Luis Antonio Tagle from the Philippines, who is now leading the Congregation for the Evangelization of Peoples. Basically, he's in charge of spreading the gospel everywhere. Tagle's appointment isn't just important, it symbolizes Francis's vision for a more inclusive church. Tagle himself put it perfectly. We will go to those worlds with you to bring the light of Christ. That means the church is on the move, and no one's getting left behind. But Tagle isn't the only one to keep an eye on when it comes to the future of Catholicism in Vatican City. Two big players are standing at the crossroads of where the church is headed. One is Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, a charismatic leader from the Philippines, where being Catholic is almost a national sport. The other is Cardinal Pietro Parolin, the Vatican's Secretary of State, kind of like the Church's Prime Minister, who has a knack for handling all the political and bureaucratic messes with the skill of someone who knows all the Church's secrets. Pope Francis, the reform-minded pontiff who loves to challenge old traditions, definitely has a soft spot for Luis. Why not? Luis embodies Francis's vision for a modern, compassionate church, warm, empathetic, and really in tune with what people need. He connects with Catholics from Manila to Madrid, making him a perfect ally for Francis's mission to reinvent Catholicism for today's world. But don't count out Pietro just yet. As the Vatican's top diplomat, he's the steady hand guiding the Church through the tricky waters of international politics and internal issues. With years of experience, he's the go-to guy when it comes to negotiating peace or dodging scandals. He's practical, careful, and deeply committed to keeping the Church's integrity intact. If Luis is the heart of Pope Francis's vision, Pietro is the backbone. Born in Italy in 1955, Parolin's career is like a playbook for Vatican diplomacy. He joined the Holy See's diplomatic service in the early 80s and has since worked in Africa, Europe, and Latin America, building a reputation for handling even the toughest geopolitical challenges with grace. He's behind some of the Vatican's biggest diplomatic wins, like the deal with China on appointing bishops and the thawing of relations between the US and Cuba. When the Holy See needs to respond to international conflicts, it's usually Parolin who crafts the strategy, balancing moral values with political realities. Despite his achievements, Parolin is somewhat of a mystery to the public. He's not the type to grab headlines or go viral on social media, and honestly, he probably likes it that way. His calm and collected style might not be flashy, but it's what makes him so effective. He's the Vatican's reliable hand in a world where diplomacy can feel like a rough-and-tumble sport. Parolin knows how to play the long game, and he does it exceptionally well. This tug-of-war in philosophy has led to some interesting speculation. Will Pope Francis push aside traditionalists like Pietro in favor of leaders like Luis, who seem perfect for his progressive agenda? Some Vatican watchers are already betting on Luis as the next in line for Francis's reformist legacy. But here's the big question. Who exactly is Luis Antonio Tagle, and why does Pope Francis seem so taken with him? For starters, Luis is a natural communicator, a rare find in an institution often seen as out of touch. Whether he's speaking to a huge crowd or having a quiet chat with a parishioner, he has this genuine warmth that makes people feel valued and heard. It's no surprise that people are calling him the Asian Francis, Just look at his record as Archbishop of Manila. Luis has really pushed for social justice and worked hard to lift up marginalized communities. His way of leading isn't about bossing people around. It's more about connecting folks from different backgrounds and beliefs. In many ways, he's already embodying what Pope Francis stands for, a church that values compassion over strict rules. Now, not everyone is excited about the idea of Luis moving up in the ranks. Some traditionalists in the church are worried that his progressive views might push away conservatives who are already feeling uneasy with Pope Francis's changes. And let's be real, change can stir things up in an institution as old and set in its ways as the Catholic Church. Meanwhile, Pietro is still the steady hand at the helm, making sure the Vatican doesn't drift too far from its course. His style might not be as flashy as Pope Francis or Luis, but it's hard to argue with the results. Under his leadership, the Vatican has tackled some tricky diplomatic situations and kept its spot as a key player on the world stage. When it comes to the inner workings of the Vatican, few names are bigger than Cardinal Pietro Parolin. For years, he's been Pope Francis's right-hand man, quietly guiding things while the Pope shakes up the Church with his reforms. But now, there's a new star on the rise in Rome. Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle, with his friendly smile, magnetic charm, and knack for connecting with people from all walks of life. He's no stranger to the spotlight. Known for sharing Pope Francis's vision of a more welcoming and compassionate church, Tagle has become a favorite among reform-minded Catholics. If Parolin is the steady force keeping the Vatican's gears turning, Tagle is the heartwarming face of its future. Or at least, that's how some people are starting to see it. So, is there some kind of competition brewing between these two cardinals? Or are Vatican watchers just reading too much into it? Parolin's leadership style is all about being methodical, sticking to traditions, and getting things done without seeking attention. He may not be flashy, but that's exactly what makes him effective. On the flip side, we have Tagle, who's known for connecting with everyday people and passionately embracing the Pope's reform agenda. He's more about the people than the protocols, which is a big contrast to Parolin's more buttoned-up style. But it's not just his charm or his high-profile role that's got people talking. Tagle really embodies Pope Francis's vision for a church that cares for the poor. He champions social justice, environmental care, and inclusivity, values that hit home with Francis's transformative papacy. For many, Tagle represents a dynamic, compassionate future for the church that's not afraid to challenge the status quo. So, are we looking at a rivalry here? Well, that might depend on who you ask. Some outside observers are eager for drama and see a power struggle brewing. But inside the Vatican, things are rarely that clear-cut. On paper, Parolin and Tagle couldn't be more different. One is a seasoned diplomat who excels in behind-the-scenes negotiations, while the other is a charismatic reformer who shines in front of crowds. One stands for tradition and stability. The other symbolizes change and renewal. It's easy to see how their different styles could look like a clash. But let's not get too carried away. Despite their differences, Parolin and Tagle might actually complement each other in Pope Francis's vision for the Church. After all, every successful organization needs both steady hands and bold visionaries. Parolin keeps the Vatican's complex operations running smoothly, while Tagle inspires Catholics around the world to embrace a more compassionate and inclusive faith. If there is any tension between them, and let's be honest, there probably is, so far, it hasn't turned into open conflict. Both men are smart enough to know that public squabbles would only hurt their shared goal of supporting Pope Francis's papacy. And what about Pope Francis himself? Could he be orchestrating this dynamic duo as part of some bigger plan? It wouldn't be surprising for a pope who knows how to think long-term. In the end, it might not matter whether Parolin and Tagle see each other as competitors or collaborators. What really counts is that they're both dedicated to serving Pope Francis and pushing forward his vision for a more compassionate and inclusive church. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Before you go, check out the next video that pops up on your screen.